The ancients once taught, "When the world is just, the talented will rise. When the world is unjust, the schemers will rise." In the chaotic era of the Three Kingdoms, when the world was divided into three parts, heroes emerged like spring grass. There was one person who did not command armies in battle, nor proclaim himself emperor to establish his own state, yet was the one who brought an end to the bloody struggles. Sima Yi. He was not a fierce general on the battlefield, nor a wise ruler renowned across the world, but a person who hid his sword in his sleeve, concealed deep strategies in his heart, and gradually seized power, overthrowing dynasties, establishing a lasting legacy for the Sima family. However, what surprises later generations is that the ultimate victor was secretly terrified of 5 outstanding individuals. Some were loyal ministers and righteous heroes. Others were his formidable rivals, while some were wise and enlightened monarchs. Each one of them, without wielding a sword or dagger, made Sima Yi hesitate to take action. How could someone as deeply strategic as Sima Yi ever feel insecure? How could someone who controlled the fate of the world be so unsettled by the presence of others? In today's video, join us as we explore the 5 rare figures that even Sima Yi, a lifelong power broker, had to fear. If you love history and stories filled with profound life philosophies, please consider subscribing to our channel so we can reflect on historical moments together. Sima Yi, courtesy name. Zhongde was born in Henan during the late Han Dynasty in the time of the Three Kingdoms division. Amidst the fragmented world as heroes rose from all corners, he chose a path not of swords and war, but of silent strategies, gradually controlling the world through clever planning. Though he never established a state or proclaimed himself king, his deep intelligence and patient endurance led him to eventually lay the foundation for the Jin dynasty, bringing an end to the Three Kingdoms period. The final victory he achieved was not through battle cries or flags flying over city walls, but through a silent power that quietly absorbed the land as heroes fell one by one. But it is precisely because of his ability to endure and remain hidden that later generations are uncertain about his true nature. Some call him a wise strategist who understood the times. Others view him as a villain, a manipulator of politics with an unpredictable and deep ambition. He did not take his army to the battlefield, nor did he wield a sword before thousands of soldiers, yet he silently manipulated the court, reducing the Wei Emperor to a mere shadow. In the blurry line between being wise and cunning, Sima Yi left an indelible mark on history. He may not have won people's love, but he made the world bow before him. Sima Yi's life is a long saga of patience and calculation. When the Wei court was under the control of Cao Shuang, he quietly remained in the shadows, waiting for the right moment like a dragon coiled in the clouds. In 249, he suddenly launched a coup in Luoyang, the event later known as the Cao Binglang Rebellion, overthrowing Cao Shuang and taking full control of the political power. But what later generations found impressive was not just the success of a coup, but the smooth transmission of power from him to his sons, Sima Shi and Sima Zhao, and later to his grandson, Sima Yan, each step firmly securing the power in the grand chessboard of history. Sima Yi's career was not as spectacular as a shooting star, but as persistent as an underground river. While renowned generals like Guan Yu, Zhang, Fei Lu Bu, and Zhuge Liang faded into history, the Sima family quietly grew stronger. This laid the solid foundation for his grandson, Sima Yan, to depose the Wei Emperor Cao Huan in 266, establishing the Jin dynasty and uniting the realm, a grand achievement that no one had managed to accomplish in over 80 years of war in the Three Kingdoms yet, was completed by someone who never shed a drop of blood on the battlefield. What's strange and what makes later generations ponder is that the more silent he was, the more he made others fear him. The longer he waited to take action, the more others were forced to be cautious. The greatest danger sometimes lies in the silent shadow, not in the battle cries on the battlefield. That was the secret that allowed the Sima family, from an unremarkable family, to quietly seize control of the world, like the spring breeze passing through the door, unnoticed while the grass grew green across the land. But the will of heaven is fair, and fate turns even the most cunning individuals cannot escape moments of unease. Though Sima Yi was a master of power, manipulation, his heart was not always as steady as a mountain. For on the path to seizing the world, he had to face not only those who wielded swords, but also those who lived by loyalty and died for their integrity. Among these, there were 5 individuals that made Sima Yi cautious every time they were mentioned. 4. Zhuge Liang. In the turbulent Three Kingdoms period, a time when heroes gathered and generals were as numerous as the stars and talents were as hidden as dragons, there was one man who, though not of royal blood nor bestowed with authority by the emperor, possessed wisdom far surpassing the masses. His virtue and intellect made him a towering figure in ancient Chinese history. That was Zhuge Liang, courtesy name Ming, also known as the Sleeping Dragon or No.1. He was revered as the divine figure by the people, a pillar of support for the Shu Han dynasty, and even his enemies, including Sima Yi, whispered his name with caution. Among all the figures Sima Yi faced, Zhuge Liang was the one whom he never dared to underestimate. History records that when Liu Bei passed away in Baidi City, Zhuge Liang became the sole ruler of the Shu Han court. Carrying out the final wishes of the late emperor, he assisted the young Liu Shan while also personally leading the northern expeditions, beginning the legendary campaign known as the 6 Expeditions to Qishan. In these 6 campaigns, Sima Yi faced him 5 times on the front lines, and in all 5 encounters, Sima Yi never dared to personally engage in battle. He focused solely on defense, reinforcing his camp, constructing fortifications, and resolutely refusing to be swayed by any provocations. People once criticized Sima Yi as a coward, claiming that he avoided direct confrontation with Zhuge Liang out of fear of failure. However, in the eyes of a schemer like Sima Yi, this was the pinnacle of winning without fighting. He understood that Zhuge Liang was not only a brilliant military strategist, but also a master of psychology, atmosphere, and strategy, capable of manipulating his enemies like pieces on a chessboard. A man like him, without favorable conditions, would be like jumping into a boiling pot of intelligence. Thus, Sima Yi, with his naturally suspicious and cautious nature, chose patience, even if he was mocked as a coward, as long as he could survive and win in the long run. But behind that caution was a silent fear hard to articulate, for Zhuge Liang was not just a military advisor. He embodied a grand vision. He led armies like a saint, governed the state like a wise king, upheld loyalty, lived frugally, and cared little for fame or fortune. In a world where everyone was fighting for power and gain, Zhuge Liang's presence was like a beam of light shining through the dark scheming of someone like Sima Yi. He was not just an opponent on the battlefield, but a mirror reflecting the hearts of men, making anyone with malicious intent shudder in fear. Some say that Sima Yi refrained from fighting because he respected Zhuge Liang. But if it was merely out of respect, why didn't he take advantage of Zhuge Liang's illness to launch a counterattack? Sima Yi knew full well that Zhuge Liang's ideology did not lie solely in his military tactics, but deep within the hearts of his soldiers, in the indomitable spirit of the Shu. One who kills a person may not necessarily kill their will. Therefore, throughout his encounters with Zhuge Liang, Sima Yi maintained one attitude: know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be in danger. Even when Zhuge Liang provoked him with taunts, used beautiful women as bait, or even staged a fake death with fire tactics, Sima Yi never left his camp, never launched an attack, never fell into a trap that he knew he could not escape. History also recounts the story of the time when Zhuge Liang sent Sima Yi a wooden coffin as a false funeral gift. Everyone in the camp was suspicious, but only Sima Yi correctly guessed the intention and dared not act hastily. He withdrew his troops. Zhuge Liang's death did not come by sword, but by illness. Yet what shocked later generations was that after Zhuge Liang passed away, Sima Yi immediately submitted a memorial to the court, claiming credit for the victory. But deep down, he always feared that figure. And from that moment on, the Shu court weakened, with no one left to constrain Sima Yi's power. Zhuge Liang's death tilted the world, but curiously, even though he died first, the hearts of the people remained with him, while Sima Yi, despite his long life accomplishments and rise to the peak of power, remained overshadowed by the legacy of the sleeping dragon. There is a famous story that Zhuge Liang knew Sima Yi often licked his fingers when reading, so he poisoned the pages of his military strategies. While this may be just a legend, it serves to show that in the minds of the people, Zhuge Liang was clever enough to expose the villain even after passing into the afterlife. Thus, it can be said that the person who terrified Sima Yi was not the strongest general, but one with the highest morals, the most encompassing intellect, and an indomitable character. In Sima Yi's eyes, Zhuge Liang was an opponent who could not be defeated with swords or tactics. He was the epitome of wisdom and righteousness, someone whom Sima Yi could never surpass in the hearts of the people throughout his life. 3. Cao Zhen, courtesy name. Zidane was the adopted son of Cao Cao and the father of Cao Shuang, one of the final power brokers before the Cao Binglang rebellion. Although Cao Zhen's origins were not as illustrious as the imperial family due to his father's deep bond with Cao Cao, he was adopted into the family, granted the Cao surname, and advanced in his career. However, the greatest value in him was not his lineage, but his strategic acumen and absolute loyalty to the Cao family's cause. Cao Zhen was not one to boast or make speeches in the court, but every battle he fought and every decision he made helped solidify the Wei dynasty's foundation during times of constant warfare. He was entrusted with leading the elite Tiger and Leopard cavalry, the strongest and most prestigious army of the Wei dynasty. His forces were fierce, and his tactics forced the Shu army to retreat on several occasions. Unlike the muted portrayal in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Cao Zhen was in reality a brave and powerful general who repeatedly thwarted Zhuge Liang in the western regions, and even forced Sima Yi to step back. As such, later generations would say, if Zhang He earned Sima Yi's respect through loyalty, Cao Zhen instilled fear in Sima Yi. Through his force, what made Cao Zhen so formidable was not only his prowess as a general, but also his influence as a political pillar, holding the title of Grand General. He wielded as much power as the senior officials, and his military decisions significantly impacted the court. Unlike other generals who only focused on battle, Cao Zhen also understood statecraft effectively stabilized the army's morale and earned the unwavering loyalty of his troops. In the court, he was deeply trusted by Cao Cao and Cao Pi, often stepping in to quell internal strife and maintain stability for the emperor in the midst of the fractured Three Kingdoms. To someone like Sima Yi, who preferred to conceal his schemes and gather power in the shadows, Cao Zhen was an imposing figure, blocking his path. Though Cao Zhen never openly opposed Sima Yi, his presence in the court made it difficult for Sima Yi to carry out his ambitions. He knew that as long as Cao Zhen held military power, any plots to overthrow the government would be squashed before they could even begin. Cao Zhen was not a direct adversary, but he acted as an invisible shield protecting the throne, making even the most devious power brokers hesitant. Historical records show that during Zhuge Liang's northern expeditions, it was Cao Zhen who frequently led the charge on the front lines while Sima Yi remained in the rear, not yet powerful enough to contest Cao Zhen's leadership. Even when Sima Yi was appointed as the main commander, it was mostly during the period after Cao Zhen had fallen ill and the court's power gradually shifted to others. Cao Zhen can be seen as the one who blocked Sima Yi's path throughout much of his political life. Only after his death did the balance of power shift in favor of the Sima family. For this reason, later generations often sigh. If Cao Zhen had lived another 10 years, the world might never have fallen into the hands of Sima Yi. Cao Zhen's death was a major event, akin to the heavens removing the pillar supporting the Wei dynasty. Sima Yi may not have wept over his passing, but in his heart, he must have sighed with relief. He didn't need to take action to harm him, for fate had already turned in favor of those who knew how to wait for the right moment. However, the reverence that Sima Yi showed for Cao Zhen was proof that some people, by merely existing, serve as an obstacle to those who dream of empire. What is strange is that between Cao Zhen and Sima Yi there was no personal enmity. They did not battle for power in any single clash, nor did they directly oppose each other in political debates. But the nature of the two men was like fire and water, one bright with righteousness, the other silent with ambition. It was their difference in morality and aspirations that made Cao Zhen a danger in Sima Yi's eyes, even though they never crossed swords. This is what future generations reflect on, that some forces, by simply existing, serve as an impediment. Thus it is said that among the 5 figures who made Sima Yi fearful, Cao Zhen was someone who didn't speak much and wasn't particularly known for his schemes, but was a well-rounded general, a crucial political figure, and a person who could not be surpassed if one sought to change the fate of the court. What earned him respect wasn't his tactical genius, but his integrity and ability to shoulder responsibility, ensuring the survival of the Cao family's legacy amid the storm of history. 2. Cao Pi Tao Pai, the eldest son of Cao Cao, was born in the midst of chaos and raised amidst warfare. However, he was not as famous on the battlefield as Cao Ji, nor did he have the literary acclaim of Cao Zhang. Yet, it was Cao Pi's stability, composure, and hidden intelligence that became the weapon that made those in the court never underestimate him. After Cao Cao's death, Cao Pi ascended the throne, founding the Wei dynasty, officially declaring himself emperor and becoming the first to establish a monarchy in the 3 kingdoms. This position could have easily led to arrogance, but Cao Pi chose a path of internal harmony, keenly observing people and decisively quelling any rebellions, always ensuring that power remained firmly within the imperial family. In Sima Yi's eyes, Cao Pi was not a king to be easily manipulated. On the contrary, he had the sharp eye to see through people's hearts, an excellent judge of character, and most importantly, knew who to favor and who to restrain. Cao Pi never favored Sima Yi, nor entrusted him with the highest positions of power, yet he kept him close as a pawn, both controlling and observing him. Despite Sima Yi's deep strategic mind under Cao Pi's reign, he could only endure in silence, never daring to reveal his ambitions. Cao Pi's subtlety lay in his approach. He did not crush Sima Yi, but neither did he allow him to grow stronger, while others might have been swayed by Sima Yi's words and schemes. Cao Pi always kept a sufficient distance, never giving him the opportunity to manipulate power. Some wondered, why did Sima Yi, so talented and wise, rarely show his potential under Cao Pi's reign? Because Cao Pi understood very well, one wrong move and he would fall into the cold, stern gaze of a vigilant emperor. And for Sima Yi, that was a greater threat than any sword on the battlefield. Cao Pi's reign lasted only 6 years, a brief period for a dynasty. Yet, In these 6 years, he maintained stability, eliminated potential threats, and wielded just enough power to ensure the court did not lean toward any faction. It can be said that if Cao Pi had lived for another 20 years, the Cao family's legacy would have been as solid as Mount Tai, and the Sima family might have remained merely loyal officials, never having the chance to reach the pinnacle of power. Sima Yi later admitted to his confidants, Cao Cao used men like chess pieces, but Cao Pi knew how to use men as footrests for the column. A person like that is not easy to move. This statement not only conveyed respect, but also revealed the silent fear of one who kept a sword hidden within his sleeve. And indeed, throughout Cao Pi's reign, Sima Yi remained quiet, merely observing, waiting for the right moment. But fate is a fickle thing. Cao Pi died young at the age of 40, leaving the throne to his young son, Cao Rui, while the court began to fall into the hands of weaker individuals like Cao Shuang. At that moment, the shadow of the tiger in the bushes began to stir, and Sima Yi slowly extended his claws. The Cao Binglang rebellion later became the result of over 20 years of waiting, beginning in the time when Cao Pi was still alive, a period in which Sima Yi had to suppress his ambitions, bite his tongue, and not dare reveal even a hint of his desires. If Zhang He and Cao Zhen were the generals Sima Yi feared due to their military power and fame, Cao Pi was the one who instilled fear in him because of his vision and his ability to control power so thoroughly. Unlike other kings who could be swayed by sweet words, Cao Pi knew who the loyal ministers were and who harbored malicious intentions arranging the political landscape so that righteousness remained firm. Sadly, he did not live long enough to supervise the court for a few more decades, and it was his absence that created a gap large enough for the ambitions of the Sima family to take root. Thus, later generations have passed down the saying, Cao Cao built the great empire. Cao Pi maintained its foundation, Cao Rui only held on, and Cao Shuang lost the country. And in that grand game of the world, there was only one person who made the schemer. Sima Yi admit that if he had lived, he would never have dared to plot for the throne. That was Cao Pi. 1. Cao 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 courtesy name. Mengde was a figure who evoked both admiration and resentment in equal measure. Some regarded him as a cunning villain, while others revered him as a genius. But no matter how one viewed him, no one could deny that Cao Cao possessed an extraordinary ability to read people, using them as effortlessly as the wind moves the clouds, shaping the grand scheme of things in a natural way. And it was this sharp insight that struck fear into Sima Yi, a future power broker, long before he ever stepped into the court. At that time, Sima Yi was an unknown figure from Henan, without any military experience or notable achievements. However, due to his reputation for learning strategic talent and rumored extraordinary cunning, he caught the attention of Cao Cao, who was then consolidating his power and manipulating the fading Han dynasty. Cao Cao sent messengers multiple times to recruit Sima Yi, personally calling for him to assist. But it was during these summons that the first fear of Sima Yi's life began to take shape. Sima Yi did not fear the enemy nor the sword, but he feared the eyes of someone like Cao Cao, eyes that could see through schemes, reveal ambitions, and strip away false humility. A person like Cao Cao, though he greeted with a smile, concealed murderous intent in his gaze. Sima Yi understood that if he revealed even the slightest ambition, Cao Cao would eliminate him without hesitation. Thus, Sima Yi feigned illness, lying motionless for an entire night to avoid being probed. The story is still passed down. Cao Cao sent someone to his house, and Sima Yi lay still, like a dead man, not moving a finger, not even breathing loudly. This caution of a schemer speaks volumes about the deep fear he felt towards someone with eyes sharp as a sword. But Cao Xia, Cao did not disregard him. He once told Cao Pai a statement that would be remembered by history. Sima Yi is not the kind to be a subordinate. In the future, he will play a significant role in our affairs. We must be cautious. This was not an idle remark. It was like a prophecy, a warning. Cao Cao could already see in Sima Yi the shadow of a dragon sleeping at the bottom of the water, waiting to rise and shake the heavens. Despite recognizing the danger, Cao Cao did not immediately eliminate Sima Yi. He understood that some people, no matter how devious, had not yet committed any crimes or exposed their schemes, and thus could not be executed. Cao Cao was rational in his use of people, but he also drew clear lines between trust and control. Therefore, Sima Yi was only employed in auxiliary roles such as military logistics and was never given direct access to the core of central power during Cao Cao's life. The subtlety of Cao Cao lay in his ability to use people like a knife, sharp but never allowing it to cut him. Sima Yi understood this very well. Throughout Cao Cao's life, he lived in a world of invisible surveillance, never daring to speak too freely, never advancing too quickly, and never forming factions, for he knew that any misstep would be noticed by Cao Cao's piercing gaze. Cao Cao used people like wielding a sword, striking decisively while holding tight. For Sima Yi, who harbored ambitions but had no power, this atmosphere felt like a golden cage, both luxurious and suffocating. What made Sima Yi fear Cao Cao was not his military power, but his extraordinary intellect. Cao Cao could accurately assess each minister and anticipate the changes in the world. He knew that if Sima Yi wanted to survive and advance, there was only one path to endure and wait for the right time. It was only after Cao Cao's death, when the throne passed to Cao Pi, that Sima Yi began to emerge more clearly in politics. From then on, the Sima family began to rise like an underground river, waiting to burst through the dam. However, even after gaining full control of power, Sima Yi always reminded his descendants to remember that Cao Cao was not someone to be underestimated. This was not just respect for an opponent, but the haunting memory of a ruler who could see through people's hearts. It can be said that in the list of people who made Sima Yi cautious, Cao Cao was the only one who did not need to take action. Just a look was enough to make the schemer's heart tremble.